This is always a difficult day. When it rolls around, I can't believe it's 20 years since that night. And I'm kind of repeating myself. I've had about 3-4 interviews already today doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But it is true. I mean, it's 20 years, but I can remember everything that happened from the time the game ended in Colorado till we were notified of the crash and all the funerals that came after that, like it happened just yesterday. So 20 years sounds like a lot, but in my mind, it's not. It's so fresh and so raw still. And I don't really know where to start other than what I said to Steve this morning. The school promised to remember, and we do that, and I think that's quite a tribute to Oklahoma State and what they do. They're doing the same thing with the Budke and Miranda and the Brandstetters, I think. So we're remembering those people as well. But in this case, I can tell you that all the remembrances, this is just me speaking, all the remembrances, they don't do anything to fill the hole of grief, and especially of the people who lost their loved ones. And while we do it one day a year, everybody who was involved in that and lost loved ones to this day, it's a 360. It's every day. It's every day, 24/7, and the hole never gets filled just because of one remembrance and one ceremony. I'm sure they appreciate it, but I think we need to appreciate the fact that they grieve every single day, every minute of every day. I know there's been stories in the paper today, certainly with Karen Hancock and her daughter, who was just an infant at the time. It's hard to believe that she's such an outstanding young lady. Now she's grown up before our eyes from being an infant. But 20 years is a long time, but it's still for those of us who were involved and lost great friends. It doesn't seem like 20 years. It seems like just yesterday.
Well, and I know you tell this story every year, but there's still some people that haven't heard it. You were, when you got back and you found out and you made your way over to Cordell and helped Eddie make those phone calls, and I can't even begin to imagine how difficult that was.
Well, that night, and I think I forget. I think I went into some of that on Eddie's film. I think I forgot what they used and what they didn't. But to kind of take you from the time the game was over, and I think people who are listening here, they understand that I was on that plane going out, and myself and Kyle Keller was switched to get back. Kyle had to get back because of his scouting of the next game. I don't even know who he played the next day or next game. And then Eddie just surprisingly said, "Look, you're back," because my back had been just ailing me from the time I went out there. And he said, "Well, get on this plane, you get back and get that thing checked out again." I said, "Well, okay." I didn't think anything about it because we've done that. We did that in the past. You might be on one plane here, and then for whatever reason you'd be on another one coming home. So it really wasn't anything out of the ordinary. So there's this survivor's guilt that I have 20 years later, still have it. I should have, could have been on that plane coming back if the switches weren't made. But we got back. I was on the jet coming back. And the irony of all this, too, is the plane that didn't make it back, of the three, was the only one that was in the hangar, in a warm hangar, the whole time we were in Boulder. It was sitting in there. I can remember driving we were on the bus and dropping people off at the individual planes, and the guys who were on that plane in the hangar, were giving us a hard time, "Hey, come on in, it's warm in here." Well, that was the irony of it all. That plane was taken care of for 48 hours, whatever it was, 48 hours in a warm hangar. And the rest of us were dropped off on planes that were outside. Now, it wasn't a blizzard, but it was enough snow that, maybe a couple inches, perhaps. I don't know. I forget exactly what it was. But when we took off, I know it was a thin cloud deck. These things just stay with me all the time. It seemed like it took very little time to get through the cloud deck and above the clouds, and you could see the sun setting. I mean, above the clouds, it was clear as bell, and so we got back. The other plane got back. I've heard this story told by somebody today, and it's not true. Eddie always stayed there till all the planes came in. Now the rest of us didn't. If we landed, and we were on his plane. We just got in the car and left. Myself, Sean, the players who came back on the two. But Eddie always stayed, no matter how quick he was. He was always there till the final plane got there. The rest of the team and the rest of the staff were all in. But somewhere in the conversation, it was brought up that the third plane, and I don't know how this got this way. Maybe it's what I imagined, that had mechanical problems and had to land to get it fixed. And that was kind of the word that would filter around, and that as soon as they got that thing checked out, they'd be ready to go and they'd be back. I mean, there was never any mention of a crash or anything. Well, we left, got home, walked in the door. Phone was ringing. As soon as I got through the door, Bob Berry Jr. Was on the phone. He said, "What do you know about one of the planes crashing?" And he said, I just took a chance because I did not know you were not on the plane. I just took a chance calling your house because he had no idea whether I was on that plane or not. I said, I don't know, because that's the first I've heard. Well, it didn't take long to find out that was true. Outside of, just southeast Colorado, somewhere in there, not too far from Denver. So by that time, Eddie had found that out. Everybody's back as Zach alluded to, back in Cordell. Because keep in mind, the offices were there then. They were remodeling Gallagher, so we were over in another building. Sean had come back. And it's finally sunk in, and the phone was just constantly ringing in that office. People wanting to talk. And I was in the office with Eddie, and I said, okay, now what do you want to do from here? What can we do to help, help? He said, I got to call the families. So Sean and I were sitting there, and I said, well, why don't we split it up so you don't have to call all the families? And, no, that's my job, to talk to every one of them. And he did. He called. Can you imagine doing that 10 times and telling? Now, maybe by the time some of them got his call, maybe some of them heard. I don't know. I was not privy to the other end of the conversation. But to validate that's what happened. Can you imagine getting a call like that? And he did it 10 straight times, And I don't know, time just stood still. I mean, we were there probably 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever it was. Got around to midnight or whatever it was. And so I said, what else is there left to do? Well, he said, come on, let's hop in the car. Okay. So where we going? So we're going to go over to, help me, what's the name of the dorm that's across the street from, just north of Gallagher? I always forget the name of that thing.
Yeah, I do too. I'm on the tip of my tongue.
But whatever that is, that's where our players were on a floor at that time. He says, I'm going to go check on them, every player. And he did. Checked on every player to see if they were okay. Obviously, they were not okay. Emotionally, they were just spent. And he did that. And we were there till 1:30 or 2 and left. And then everything's kind of a blur from there. The next couple of weeks, funerals, press conferences, getting ready for the memorial service. It was just, I don't know if anybody slept for a week. It was hard to put your head down. But he was so strong throughout that. And I knew what a toll was taken on him. Sean certainly knew. Scott knew. I mean, his whole family knew. But he was he was a strong. He was the John. It was a Barry Trammell. I think they call him the John Wayne of Oklahoma State. Maybe Barry. He was one. I think it might have been Barry who did it. And he was strong for everybody. And I used to wonder, because I spent a lot of time with him all the time anyway. But during this time, I mean, I probably basically moved my office over there just to be there. And we went to every funeral. And there was, funerals are never good to attend, as you well know, right? You're probably going to attest to that today. But some are just more agonizing, more painful than others. And, Brian Lewinstrip, for instance, just a young man, the trainer, he had a young wife, young child. That one we had right outside of Wichita, I think. That was agonizing. And they all were agonizing. But we went to those and got that done. And we had the memorial. I think our people know about the memorial. It was again agonizing to hear that over and over again. But somehow, we were able to kind of get through that a little bit, get past at least the memorial. And from then on, we've continued to recognize these people and their families. And I think that is so important because it's easy just to everybody get emotional on the 27th of January every year. And then come the 28th, think about it until the 27th of January the next year. The families think about it all the time. Just like any loss we have in our family, right? It's just put yourself in that position. And it's just grueling, I'm sure, all these years later, to know that hole in their heart's never going to be filled. It never will be filled. So we do our best to honor, to remember. I told Steve, I just hate the word celebrate because to me there's no celebration when it comes to this. We remember, and the remembrance is painful. It's painful, but to those of us who, and you, I think you were in here when I had Leon on, weren't you that day?
Yep.
Yeah, Leon Jones, police chief here. Leon was one of 3 representatives. Bosserman was at one, and the other one who was vice president, and I forget who the other fellow was who went out there. The 3 Oklahoma State representatives who went out immediately, like they were there the next day, before all the things were collected on the ground. And you heard him refer to that, and that's one of the only good things that came out of this for me, because we forged a relationship then 20 years ago that we didn't have, because we had a kinship, and I know he's suffering today as well, as he is every day. But it's something that it's something we live with, but it's something we also honor. And as I say all the time, let's not just everybody want to jump on and say, well, I remember when I did, and nobody cares where you were. No, nobody really does. And you don't have to, that to me is not the whole measure of this day. The measure of this day is to remember those people every day and their families every day of the year, not just one, because they're the ones suffering. They're the ones going through it, and will continue to go through it. Nothing we ever say will fill the hole. Nothing.
Well, then, Tom, and then, of course, what ensued afterwards, right? Oklahoma State and Missouri, wasn't it? The
Yes.
game? Yeah. I mean, it's really incredible. Sometimes funny, isn't it? Sports have a way of putting things into perspective. But
that was a game that, quite frankly, it was a game, but it was more than a game because that was our first time back. And,
right.
And we had to win just for our psyche.
Yeah.
And I want to say this too. I forget. Bob Berry's one, but the announcers who could, and around the Big 12, volunteered their time to come in and do a game in place of Bill. And they did it because they loved Bill and loved Oklahoma State. And I was always appreciative. I worked with, 8 or 9, whatever it was, different guys, perhaps. I don't want to name them because I'll probably leave somebody out. But for the most part, I think there was only one in the conference who couldn't make it because of a conflict. And they came and donated their whatever monies they were given to a scholarship fund. there just was an outpouring of love for the university, but for the people that were lost. And I think that was about as uplifting at the time as we could have found. Playing the game, I don't know. We actually went to the NCAA tournament that year and went out to Long Island, I think, to play. I forget who it was. It USC? I forgot who the heck we played. You got your deal there. And we were spent. And every time you went someplace, Eddie and the players would have to answer the same questions. And it's not. I'm not criticizing the people asking because they were not here. So it would be natural when Oklahoma State comes to town, or how you heal. And so every time you turn around, the questions were still being asked. But we went out there, and
it's USC.
With USC, I think I hate the word because I get on people around here saying we ran out of gas, but we didn't even have any gas to run out. I mean, the kids were spent emotionally before we ever got out there. I don't know. It wasn't close, I don't think.
69-54.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the game was that close, But we got out there, and he had a whole new set of media people. It just, tell me about it. Tell me this. Tell me that. And that's just the way it was. But I would ask that those people who are emotionally into it today, as soon as tomorrow rolls around, let's not just forget it till the 27th of next year, because the families can't and they won't. So if family members of those who were lost, and casually or maybe intimately, them, friends of yours, just give them a call every day or every other day. That to me is how we can honor them, instead of just everybody jumping up on one day a year and recalling where they were at the time. That's the issue. Is not where you were. The issue is what have you done for these family members since last year? What have you done over the previous 19 years with them? And that is the responsibility we all have that we're part of it.